Wait, you want how much for my mailbox being the wrong color? That's exactly what I'm thinking when this crazy HOA lady shows up demanding $3,500. My wife Julie just looks at this woman and says, no. Just like that. Kayla loses her mind and calls the cops on us. I'm freaking out, but when the officer shows up and sees my wife, he goes completely white. Judge, you live here? The look of pure horror on Kayla's face, chef's kiss. This story has a twist nobody saw coming. I'm Blake Ward, and my wife Julie and I just moved into this $2.5 million house in one of those pristine suburban developments where every lawn looks ruler cut and every mailbox costs more than most cars. The place came with perfectly manicured gardens, a 3-car garage, and apparently a homeowners association president who thought she was running her own personal dictatorship. Working from home means I get front row seats to all the neighborhood drama. Usually it's garbage cans 2 inches too close to sidewalks or debates about beige versus cream fence colors. What I didn't expect was our HOA president showing up like she was conducting a military raid. This woman strutted up our driveway at exactly 7 a.m., wearing a navy blazer screaming, "I demand to speak to your manager," carrying a clipboard thick enough to stop bullets. The doorbell rang twice, sharp and authoritative, like announcing her arrival to peasants. I was upstairs when I heard Julie answer. Here's something about my wife, Julie Parker is the calmest person I've ever met. I've seen her handle crisis situations with Zen master composure. So when I came downstairs seeing her completely relaxed, listening to this woman rant about violations, I knew something was different. I'm Kayla Sanders, president of the Evergreen Lake HOA, the woman announced like she was the Queen of England. Your property is currently in violation of 17 separate community standards. The total fine is $3,500. She said this with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. I'm thinking, lady, you picked the wrong house today. Julie just smiled that patient smile she uses with particularly challenging people. Could you show me exactly which municipal code grants the HOA that authority? I swear I saw Kayla's eye twitch. Most people would ask what violations or how much. Not my wife. She went straight for the legal foundation, and Kayla wasn't expecting that pushback. Kayla started rattling off her list, $2,000 for unauthorized landscape modifications, apparently our roses were the wrong shade of pink. $1,000 for an unapproved mailbox design, ours was black instead of bronze. $500 in processing fees for moving into the neighborhood without asking permission first. The whole time she's clutching this clipboard like sacred text, voice getting higher with each violation. That's when our elderly neighbor Mrs. Collins appeared, whispering loud enough for us to hear. She destroyed the Morgan family with these same tactics. They had to sell for half what it was worth. I'm getting frustrated. Julie, just tell her you're a judge. Because here's the thing, my wife is a federal district judge. She deals with criminals and corrupt officials every day. This HOA nonsense should be beneath her notice. But Julie gave me that look she uses on complex cases. Let me see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Kayla was still ranting about community standards when Julie asked her second question, has this assessment been ratified by majority vote per the Davis-Sterling Act? Kayla's confidence cracked just enough to show uncertainty underneath. Well, we follow all proper procedures, she stammered, then recovered. You have 48 hours to pay or we escalate to the next level. As Kayla left, practically floating on smugness, she turned back. Most people fight these charges at first, but they all pay eventually. It's easier when residents understand their place. After her heels clicked away, Julie immediately started photographing documents. That's when I knew something bigger was happening. My wife doesn't document things unless she's building a case. What exactly are you planning? I asked. She looked up with something like excitement. Blake, this woman thinks she found another easy mark. She Googled our property value, saw the name Parker, and assumed I was just another suburban housewife she could intimidate. Julie moved around our kitchen with purposeful energy I'd seen before major verdicts. What Kayla? Doesn't realize is she's not just running a scam, she's committing federal crimes and just handed me all the evidence needed to prove it. That's when Julie made the call that started everything. "Hi, this is Judge Parker. I need you to pull some files for me." I stood there watching my wife transform from suburban homeowner to federal judge right before my eyes. Our quiet Tuesday morning had become the first shot in a war Kayla had no idea she'd started. 3 days later, Kayla returned with reinforcements and new confidence about to get crushed spectacularly. She brought a briefcase costing more than my car, a contractor avoiding eye contact like he was ashamed, and swagger telling me she'd rehearsed this performance many times. The fee had mysteriously grown from $3,500 to $8,000 overnight. Apparently math works differently in Kayla's criminal enterprise. Threatened someone Monday, double the extortion by Thursday. "Mrs. Parker," she announced like delivering a court verdict, "your continued non-compliance has escalated this significantly." She handed Julie official-looking documents with fancy letterhead and intimidating language. The board voted to impose additional penalties: $2,000 late fees, $1,500 attorney consultation, $1,000 lien preparation. I watched Julie's prosecutor instincts kick in, that look a cat gets before pouncing on a mouse. "This is fascinating," she said in the tone she uses before dismantling someone's legal argument. "Could you walk me through the specific Davis-Sterling Act provisions authorizing these penalties?" That's when Tom Rodriguez appeared with perfect timing. This honest neighbor lives 3 houses down and had been watching Kayla's operation from inside as a board member, documenting her tactics. "Kayla," Tom interrupted with that edge you get when done pretending everything's okay. "I don't remember the board voting on these penalties. In fact, I don't remember having a board meeting at all this week." Suddenly Kayla's confident performance looked less convincing. "Since when do we have authority to impose late fees without formal notice?" Kayla went from predatory confidence to barely controlled panic in 5 seconds. Tom wasn't some random neighbor she could intimidate, he was an inside witness exposing her lies in real time. That's when Julie made her power move. "I'd like to request a formal HOA board meeting to discuss payment options. I believe bylaws require 7 days notice for all residents." What she was actually doing was forcing Kayla into a public forum where her scam tactics would be exposed. The last thing any scammer wants is transparency. "That won't be necessary," Kayla stammered, clutching her briefcase. "These matters are typically handled privately." Translation: "Please don't make me explain made-up fees to people who know I'm lying." "I insist," Julie said reasonably. "As a new resident, I'd like to understand community standards fully. Other neighbors would benefit from seeing how these assessments are determined." The board meeting happened Saturday in the community center. It was like watching a master class in legal strategy. Julie showed up with research that would make law students jealous, not just HOA bylaws, but state regulations, federal guidelines, and actual case law. Before discussing my assessment, Julie began with courtroom authority creeping in. "I'd like to clarify procedural questions." Then she asked questions making any honest lawyer proud and any scammer break out in cold sweats. "Has this fine structure been ratified according to Civil Code Section 1440? Are penalty amounts consistent with graduated enforcement procedures? Do we have legal authority to impose liens without statutory notice requirements?" I watched my wife dismantle Kayla's criminal operation with polite questions and superior legal knowledge. Tom backed her up with inside information. Other board members started questioning fines they'd approved without understanding. The meeting ended with the board voting to suspend all assessments until reviewing enforcement procedures. Julie had won round 1 without revealing she was a federal judge. Walking to our car, I finally asked, "Why are you playing games? You could end this in 5 minutes showing your credentials." Julie stopped, looking back at the community center where Kayla was having a heated conversation with her contractor friend. "Blake, this woman's been running the same scam for years. She targets newcomers, especially vulnerable families. She's destroyed lives, forced people from homes, stolen hundreds of thousands through intimidation and fake legal threats. Her voice had that edge about injustice, the tone she uses sentencing people who prey on innocence. If I flash credentials and make her back down, she'll wait until we move, then start again with the next family. I understood my wife wasn't just protecting us, she was building a comprehensive federal case ending Kayla's criminal enterprise permanently. That evening brought news making even my unflappable wife look concerned. State investigators called with information about Morrison's corruption scope beyond anything imagined. He wasn't just helping with intimidation, he'd been providing false police reports justifying foreclosure proceedings and official cover for property seizures funding the entire network. "Blake, this just became much more serious," Julie said after hanging up. "Morrison's not just a corrupt cop taking bribes. He's a key player in a criminal enterprise destroying families for years. Federal charges could put him away for decades, making him desperate enough to do anything." Everything changed the next day when Detective Morrison arrived with backup and aggression telling me Kayla had given him an ultimatum: make this problem disappear or explain to dangerous people why he couldn't deliver. "Mrs. Parker," Morrison announced, "we've received harassment complaints. Some residents are concerned your resistance might escalate into something serious." The way he said, "something serious," sounded like a threat wrapped in police procedure. But Julie stepped onto our porch with calm confidence of someone holding all the cards. "Detective Morrison, I appreciate your community safety concern," she began with that measured tone before dismantling someone's case. "However, I'm curious about the legal basis for your investigation. Under what statute does the Sheriff's Department have authority over civil HOA disputes?" Morrison's rookie partner started responding, but Morrison cut him off. The younger officer stepped back, suddenly interested in his notepad. "Look, Mrs. Parker, we can do this easy or hard," Morrison said, dropping official pretense. "Your neighbors want peace. Pay the fines, follow rules, everyone goes back to normal lives. Keep fighting, and things get complicated." That's when my wife smiled, not the polite smile she'd used with Kayla, but the predatory smile I'd seen her use on corrupt defendants thinking they could outsmart federal court. "Detective, are you familiar with USC Title 18, Section 1962? It covers civil rights violations under color of law. Specifically, law enforcement officers using official authority to intimidate civilians furthering criminal enterprises." Morrison went white as paper. His partner stared between them, realizing this conversation moved way above his pay grade. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Morrison stammered, backing toward his patrol car. "Just a routine community welfare check. No problems here." He was practically dragging his confused partner down our driveway, desperate to escape before Julie asked more questions proving she knew exactly what kind of criminal he was. The final confrontation came when Officer Rodriguez arrived for what Kayla thought would be her greatest victory. She'd positioned herself like a prosecutor presenting evidence, expecting Rodriguez to validate her authority. Rodriguez approached thinking he was mediating a simple civil dispute. What he was about to do was trigger the biggest federal prosecution this county had seen in decades. When Julie opened our door, Rodriguez looked to take her statement. The recognition didn't happen instantly, it built like a slow earthquake. He looked at Julie, something about her face triggered memory. His pen stopped moving. His head tilted like trying to place where he knew her from. Then his eyes widened as pieces clicked. Rodriguez's notepad clattered on concrete. His hand moved instinctively to his hat, removing it with automatic respect from years of courtroom appearances. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Wait," he said, voice cracking with disbelief. He stepped back, staring like he'd seen a ghost. "Judge, you live here?" The words exploded loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. Pure shock, complete disbelief, the recognition that changes everything instantly. Kayla's face went through every grief stage in 3 seconds. "Judge," she repeated, confusion turning to horror. "What judge? She's just a homeowner." Rodriguez found his voice and training simultaneously. "Ma'am, this is Federal District Judge Julie Parker." I've testified in her courtroom dozens of times. She handles major federal prosecutions. Morrison looked like he was having cardiac arrest, understanding immediately what this meant. He'd been caught threatening a federal judge on camera with witnesses. Julie stepped forward with judicial authority, transforming our porch into an unofficial courtroom. Officer Rodriguez, I believe this situation requires federal coordination. I've documented evidence of criminal conspiracy, wire fraud, and civil rights violations under color of law. She handed Rodriguez a folder containing 2 weeks of meticulous evidence gathering. Detective Morrison has been using official authority to intimidate residents, furthering a criminal enterprise. Miss Sanders has been operating fraud schemes, stealing hundreds of thousands from victims across multiple counties. Your Honor, should I contact the FBI field office immediately? Rodriguez asked. That's when Kayla's world completely imploded. She'd spent 8 years thinking she was untouchable, protected by corrupt officials and community apathy. Now she stared at a federal judge who'd been building a criminal case against her. I didn't know, Kayla screamed desperately. I was just enforcing community standards. I didn't know she was anyone important. Her protests only made everything worse, admitting to treating people differently based on perceived status, exactly the civil rights violation federal judges take very seriously. Federal agents emerged from unmarked vehicles positioned throughout the neighborhood. There was nowhere to run, no way to undo federal crimes committed against the wrong target. Miss Sanders, Agent Miller announced, approaching with handcuffs, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and civil rights violations. 6 months later, consequences were everything we'd hoped. Kayla pled guilty to federal racketeering charges and received 18 years in federal prison. Morrison got 12 years for civil rights violations and conspiracy. Most importantly, victims received restitution from seized assets. Our neighborhood transformed from a place ruled by fear into the community people actually want to live in. Sometimes good guys really do win, especially when they're federal judges who don't appreciate being threatened by small-time criminals with big-time arrogance. Kayla Sanders picked the wrong house, threatened the wrong woman, and learned federal justice is more permanent than HOA violations.